right, we are back again, man. Unfiltered King and Queen podcast. We are back on this Tuesday, new space, same time, man. And so hopefully, our NFL lovers got time to see their team either win or lose. I am not going to talk about mine. But hopefully, man, you guys kind of have a time to kind of do some family stuff with that. But we wanted to make sure that you had time to kind of give the due diligence and the support that you give us. And so thank you for those who pivoting to the Tuesday spot at 7 p.m. Central. As always, this is Unfiltered King and a Queen podcast. You can catch us YouTube, social media. You can also catch us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. And we'll be coming to Apple Podcast later on in this month. Man, do we have a great one for you all tonight? As you guys can see, the Queen is back, the better half of the podcast. She's back with a $1 million smile. I started not to even show up down. I'm just like, okay, you back. You can claim your little space and everything. It's not that I'm salty, but it's glad to have you back, man. How's everything been going with you?
Everything is good. I just needed a little reset. So I'm actually happy to be back on here to see everybody and enjoy tonight's episode because I'm ready for it too.
All right. And look, thank you also for those who kept baby girl in prayer. Like I said, we know that we take mental health seriously around here and say, sometimes when you need it, you need it. And so I'm glad to have you back on a serious note, man. I'm glad that everything's going on up and up. You guys may see that we have a new face. I wish I had the drum roll sound, but I don't, you guys. So just play it in your head. But look, we have a wonderful treat. Miss Ruth Coleman will be our honored guest tonight in our topic, Life After Divorce, Living in Peace, Not in Pieces. And so I'll give her an opportunity to welcome herself and to the podcast for whatever she wants to say.
Just thank you guys for having me, and I'm looking forward to tonight.
Okay.
And helping others come through.
Okay. Now, this is very interesting, man. This is a very intimate episode, if you ask me, because actually, Ruth and I was talking. We've been knowing each other for a minute, and so she has been following my work, and so there were some comments she was putting in the last episode, right? And as always, I always ask for you guys' opinion. Hey, what do you want to hear? What do you want to talk about? It's always good in life to pivot, right? You can think that, hey, this is the great way, but God may sing you another way. And she put a topic in the last episode's comments that literally I was like, we have to coin the next podcast episode literally like that. Life After Divorce, Living in Peace, Not in Pieces. And I was so astounded down about that, living in peace, not in pieces, that we had the fortune and opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more in detail. And man, when I tell you all, if you are or have lived the life of a divorcee, if you're contemplating that life, or if you're in the transition of that life right now, I do believe that this is going to be a powerful story. This is going to have some powerful ideas, if you will, that's going to lend itself to kind of help you navigate through that. And so with that being said, again, thank you all for joining in out there. If you're joining in, always remember, you can put your comments, your questions there. We're going to try to get to them as possible. I do want to shout out a couple people. I want to shout out my brother, Calvin Hester. Man, I appreciate you. You know what you do behind the scenes, man. Your support for this podcast has kind of went through the roof. Ivan Parker, man, that's a name that you are going to hear soon. Definitely, as I told you guys, great partnerships are coming up for Unfiltered Kings and a Queen podcast. And so I want to thank him. And with that being said, man, let's just jump into our conversation tonight. So where do we start? Let's just dive in into just be real, raw, and authentic. So as I said tonight, Ruth will be our guest. And so, Ruth, with that being said, can you take us back to the moment when you realized that your marriage was no longer serving your peace? Like, what were your emotions when you were navigating through it, up to it, and how did you begin that process to shift, like when it was new to you, right?
I guess I can say I didn't really know it wasn't serving me. I couldn't really answer that question. I didn't know it wasn't serving me. I didn't really want out per se.
Okay.
When when I was told that they didn't want out or just really didn't want to try, that's when I knew my worth. So that's when I found out that it was time to not keep faking it. You know, this. I guess you can say people say a lot, fake it till you make it. It was time
Hmm.
for me to stop living in a fantasy world that you want that perfect marriage, you want the picket white picket fence, and that wasn't what it wasn't all cracked up to be, if you will.
Okay.
So that's when I realized it wasn't serving me.
Okay. Hey, Juanita from Houston. Man, I'm glad you can join on. And so thank you for joining us tonight. And so let's preface this, and this is something Ruth, that we talked about in the debriefing, is that you never go into marriage with the idea that one day you will be breaking up, right? So
Right,
sometimes, like you said, you don't see it, or even when it happens, you don't want to believe it, right? Because the whole goal of signing up and saying I do is a forever thing, right? And so I wanted to land that there and normalize it, because a lot of time, we talked on Sunday how the false confidence, if you will, everybody got the great advice. Well, you should see the signs, you can see this. It don't work that way in real life, right? Like
right,
there is a part of you that thinking you're trying to fix it, and hey, you should try to fix it and work it out. But the reality of it is, I like what you said, is that your epiphany was the fact, wait a minute, it's not being reciprocated.
right.
Wait a minute, this person is choosing not to partner with me and work it out. But even in those early stages, like if you wouldn't mind sharing, like what type of emotions or did you deal with in the beginning when you realize, okay, I'm trying to work it out. I'm living in this fantasy world of thinking that it's supposed to be happily ever after. Like, what emotions set in quickly to start your process?
I think because you get so accustomed and used to normalcy, what you deem as normalcy. I guess what I first experienced was where do I go from here? How do I pick up the pieces? I knew what the process was, but it's like you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So in the beginning, it was more me trying to focus on how I'm going to, if I'm being real, how am I going to live without this person? Or
Mm-hmm.
how I'm going to just make it without this person. And it's not because you're just so in love, but it's just that's the normalcy of what you've been accustomed to. So it's just how do you deal or how do you find a way to how you're going to make it, so to speak.
Okay. And I think that's a real reality also, is that, and we talked about this on Sunday, a lot of time people haven't been through it, right? There's a lot of these false narratives on how it should look like based on what side they're taking. Or even if it's the easy answer, right? That other person cheated, so you should just be able to do this. But like you said, the reality is there are nuances, right? And we talked about that first one. It's like, man, what does life look like without this person, right? Like if we
Hmm.
don't brought finances together, we got kids together, or kids in the household, or all these logistics, and all of a sudden we know there's going to be a finite date in which that change in that person won't be there. Well, how do you do that? Like where though does those answers actually come from? We got Queen Coleman that's following us on YouTube, who said hello. Hello, Queen Coleman. Thank you for joining in and watching us. To those who just got in, Unfiltered King of the Queen podcast, we're discussing the topic life after divorce, living in peace, not in pieces. And so we have our distinguished guest, Ruth Coleman, on the line, who's been humble and willing to share, bits and pieces of her testimony through divorce. And more important, we'll start talking about what does that life afterwards look at? How do we can gain our peace and not necessarily let everything kind of fall the pieces. Now, um, hello, Ruth. Want to make sure that I get it up there that she spoke to you.
Hey, Queen.
So we were talking about those emotions, right? And I think Ruth, that was the hardest thing we were talking about on Sunday. That everybody has different emotions, right?
Hmm.
Hurt, pain, guilt, things of that sort. But a lot of people have these stream of emotions when divorce becomes reality. What helped you lift that extra emotional weight, right? Those emotions that was probably there, but they didn't serve a purpose, or they were probably there prematurely. What helped you kind of lose those emotions so you can start dealing with the reality of what you was talking about, like those real emotions that you had to deal with?
Truthfully, counseling. Um, Counseling. I did counseling, and that's how I was able to mentally start to prepare to heal, if you will. But counseling and me doing a journey with God was my saving grace. Because, like I said in the beginning, I thought I was broken or thought I couldn't live without that individual. And in no way, in shape, form, or fashion, am I bashing anyone or am I advocating divorce? Because when I, like you said in the beginning, when I got married, I wasn't thinking like I'm going to get a divorce. And I think that's why I stayed in a marriage for 26 years, because that's who I thought that I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. But counseling helped me to see or helped me to start to put the pieces back together
Okay.
and just finding who I was and who I am.
And that's something that I want to take some time. And first, if nothing else, I want to commend you on, right? Because a lot of time we talk about, and we talk about it on this podcast, how taboo counseling has gotten in our community, in our Black community, quite frankly, right? And so a lot of time when we go through divorce, and we'll kind of talk about this later, everybody kind of take their sides, and everyone shows up with this advice from their lens. But the reality of it is, depending on how you live your relationship, who really knows the inside nuances, right? And I love something that you said on Sunday, Ruth, if you can elaborate on it. Typically, even though if one of the partners did the initial wrong, there's areas of opportunity to grow on both sides, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so, what do you do with that? If you got a bunch of yes people around you, you're already starting off bad. So I love the fact how you normalize counseling. Hey, if my head hurt, back hurt, I go to a doctor. Well, if I'm going through these emotions, let me go to someone who's been clinically uh, astute, if you will, to get the help that I need. Kenneth Boston, man, if you guys haven't followed Kenneth Boston, the Fire Session, check out his podcast, man. Thank you for being able to kind of get on here tonight. He said, yeah, 26 years is a long time to be with anyone. And so just like Kenneth said, like a lot of people, they only look in that one moment of disagreement or that one section, which is the divorce part. But they don't think about, like you said, 26 years. This is all I know. I've literally lived life. My life is built in lock and key, 26 years. And now I'm going to have to find a way to just start this thing anew because life don't take any commercial breaks, right?
Right.
And so a lot of time people don't understand like even that nuance of that time. Like how do you actually change that? You had something you want to ask for that? Terry Coleman said hello. Well, you have a lot of people that's checking in and saying hello. I just want to make sure I get it out. I don't want no inbox. You didn't say tell. I said hello. I did. I just want to make sure I did my part. But no, as far as that time frame and that transfer that time frame, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
To the 26 years, I'm sorry.
Yeah, as far as that transition between if you've been with someone for years and now all of a sudden you're trying to figure out a life without this person, like what
Okay.
type of transition and or struggles, if you will, does that bring?
So we were married 26 years, together 34.
Oh,
And we lived apart for a while because he was military. So we lived apart. So the question too, it was already, you asked me something Sunday was, how do you miss a person? I didn't, it was easy for me. And when I say easy, because we had already lived apart. Um, so I think I started to miss when I started to find who I was and learn me and through counseling. I learned that I didn't miss the person. I miss what I deemed as to be normal, or I miss
mm,
the person that I created him to be.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I'm gonna say this without really telling my age. What looks good to you in your 20s no longer looks good to you when you start to grow and get
Amen.
to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell my age. I'm grateful. Now that I'm 50, I don't, things that were attractive to me or I thought that was just wonderful at 20 start looking different to me when I was in my 40s. And I have
No.
more years behind me than I do in front of me. And so in counseling helped me to see that it's time for me to start living. Not that she advocated divorce, but it was more like, what does Ruth like? And I couldn't tell you what I liked. I told you what I liked as a wife, what I liked as a mother, but I couldn't tell you what I liked. And now I can start to tell you what I like, what I love. And I couldn't say
Okay.
that back then. So I didn't miss the person. I missed what I created that person to be.
Mm.
Mm.
Now, Ruth, we don't usually do this on here, but I'm gonna have to ask for some ID right here on public in front of everybody. I'm gonna have to see a social security card, a EBT card, or something because you said you were 50, and I'm just saying I need some type of proof. No, we can deal with that later. We'll deal with that later. You know what I'm saying? But no, I think it's interesting something that you said that I think was powerful, and I want to kind of revisit that. And I see a Marlon Winfrey said, "Yes, I can relate to this and have to start over after 25 years." You guys, I won't even talk about it. I'll let you guys go back to the divorce and tell you how quick mine was. But that's something I think is so important to normalize from the beginning. When you don't live X amount of time with someone day for day, that oneness that we talk about in the marital vows, like it was never meant to come apart. And I think a lot of time people take for granted in this world of just material things, whatever. That's not all the time easy just to identify yourself and find who that new person is, right? It's not easy just to strip that away. And we're literally talking about next day, right?
Mhm.
Like I said again, sometimes this is not about a commercial break. But I
Right.
love how you put it. And if you can kind of elaborate on this again for our audience, you said, I had to wake up and realize not be, and I forget how you put it, but for lack of a better term, I had to realize who he was, not my idea of who he was.
Right.
Like, what was that turning? What does that turning point look like to you?
Um, and I can't speak for no one else. When I say speak for no one else, I'm talking about my ex. Um, I could have changed to him because I'm
Okay.
not, like I said, I could have changed to him. And what I, even as a little girl, I always knew I wanted to be married. And I'm not girlfriend material. Let me explain it. I'm wife material. So I don't want to be someone's girlfriend all my life. That's what I used to think when I was dating. I wanted to be a wife. And so, with that being said, I thought a wife had to do certain things. And so, in my head, my husband had to be certain things and a certain person. So, I think that me creating him, he lived up to my creations to a certain extent.
Mm,
So, I put out there what I wanted, and he lived up to that. And so, sometimes you can resent a person because that's not who you really are. And it's
mm,
not to say you're a bad person. It's just that I'm tired of being that. And so it's like I'm tired of being that. I've did all of that. Now I want to be me. And that, that's not a bad thing, but it's just that he served his purpose and I served mine,
mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
No, it does. Donna, I'm interested in just hearing your viewpoint because again, on this podcast, man, we try to get down with these conversations and have more men and women are talking to each other, right? And this is typically not a space where men and women are talking to each other, right? Usually at this point, we're at each other, right? And so Root says something that I think was profound, and I want to make sure that this nugget didn't get away. How we assimilate and become the person to mirror the other person because hey, we want those things out of them. And I love the fact that she said, well, sometimes it's not a good or a bad thing, but it's that can be ineffective, right? And so we catch ourselves doing these things to try to get this other person to do those things, but ultimately in the end, are we being truthful to ourselves, right? Because ultimately, when the smoke clears, we're probably going to be ourselves, right? And then those are the changes that we probably have problems with. Do you have any feedback or thought process on that, Diana?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, what she's saying, it makes sense. Creating what you want your partners to kind of be like, and then hoping that reciprocity, right, reciprocation will show through, becoming a mirror, right. This is who I would
Mhm.
like my partner to essentially be, and then, like she said, when you start growing, right, what you thought you liked at this age, and as you grow and become, a better you, right, you start to they start to shed their skin, and you start to see that, okay, I thought that I liked this
Mhm.
part of you, but now that the skin is coming off, and the mask is kind of falling, I'm actually really able to see you for what you really are. um so so but I commend you also for, one, telling your story, and then two, actually going through the process. And again, like you said, nobody's saying that, yes, go get a divorce and X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But being able to actually talk about it, articulate it the way you are articulating it, I can still I can hear and feel the emotions, in you as you're talking about your story. So it does resonate. So that's why I'm trying to be more of a listener than,
Mhm.
somebody that's divulging. So.
Okay.
Right, right. And I appreciate that, Diana. Queen Coleman says she is 50, and I can attest to that. I have an idea that I think who Queen Coleman is, but I'm gonna just let her identity be left unrevealed. But she said I can attest to that, so I won't ask you for any ID, Ruth. Okay, I promise you. So,
Okay.
um, but yeah, you are right. I do thank you so much, Ruth, and I thank you probably a million times, lending your voice and your transparency to our platform. Life after divorce, living in peace, not in pieces. That was actually a term that you actually coined, and so I didn't want to change anything about it because I do understand the vulnerability that could be there, right? And we all have a choice to decide what we want to share, especially in a social media platform like this. But I think there are huge pieces that you've shared so far that people can actually learn from, and we can normalize it and have a better conversation. So I
And I
greatly
want to
appreciate.
give credit to counseling, my counselor Rachel. She
Okay.
always, going through counseling, she used to say, um, you would rather live in peace than pieces. And when I first started counseling, I never understood that term. I never understood the term. But when I started to, how I started to understand it is when I start to have peace within.
Amen.
And I
Mm,
saw that it was so powerful that I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, that I
yeah.
would never live in pieces again or feel like I can't be me and be in somebody else's image. And when I
Mm,
was married, I wanted to do everything to be the perfect wife. There is no perfect wife.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that he made me be a perfect wife, or that's not what I'm saying. In my head, I thought I had to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But in this grand scheme of things, I lost who Ruth was.
mm,
And so Rachel is the one who, um, going through counseling, let me know the meaning of you'd rather live in peace than pieces. And that's my motto now. I'd rather live in peace than live in anybody's pieces, or to live in pieces.
my. There's going to be some I want to recognize right here, and I think it's going to echo throughout this episode. I love the two components of what you're saying to where, because a lot of time people think divorce, and there are some divorces that are messy, Lord knows. I've been through one. But sometimes there's just a humble recognition that we're not there. We're not that. And are we trying to just craft that for whatever reason, outside appeal, fooling ourselves? But I love how you normalize the fact and took that accountability to say, hey, I just look within myself and then I looked up, right? Like it doesn't mean that this is a bad person. They did this wrong. Yeah, there are some of those cases, But sometimes you get to a point where there's just emotional intelligence. Like, wait a minute, am I even being me? And then the fact that you turn to counseling, because the reality is, like, we can turn to family, friends, these yes people. Oh, I know it's not me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I know that, and we could have just buckled down. And I think you said something earlier that was profound, which a lot of people do. Oh, I could just assimilate that. Oh, I can be that. I know this person long enough to I can just be that, right? And be okay with it, right? So I think there is a very mature approach in a way where we always talk about here on that emotional intelligence, understanding self first, and then that will dictate how we handle the outside world. Man, look, we got questions coming in. Okay, looks like
Marlon.
Marion, is that Marion? I'm sorry,
I think it
Marlon.
says Marlon.
Marlon, Marlon, you got your own podcast, bro. He up here like he got a question. You know what? Just cause you knew, we're gonna go on and answer the question. Marlon, like, I got my podcast tomorrow. He said to the panel, preferences. He didn't even know about that. Ruth is the guest, but okay. To the panel, what role did you play in the breakdown of the relationship? Marlon, you don't know me like that. I'm perfect. I'm the second thing since Jesus Christ. No, I'm just kidding. To the panel, what role did you play in the breakdown of the relationship? Anybody want to chew with that? Marlon put us on the spot. You know what I mean? What?
Explain explain what
So,
exactly he mean by that.
so I think what he's asking is, obviously it takes two to tango, right?
Uh huh.
So, and in any relationship, there's fault on
Okay.
both ends.
Okay.
There's not one person that just killed the relationship. Two people came together, and both sides played a part in how it broke down. So
Okay.
he's
So
asking, in
Okay.
your relationship, your marriage, right? What role did you play in it kind of like, falling
Okay.
apart, basically?
I can answer that. For me, I think the biggest thing is communication. I wasn't myself. I couldn't be myself. Um, and I think when I say communication is that mm, I explained that I wanted to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think I was being heard when it's like I can't be me, that I couldn't be me. And I think so communication and we stopped communicating. And I think that both of us fell out of love at the same time. And I think that when you do that, it's hard to put that back together again. And sometimes you can stay together for the wrong reasons. So I
right,
think to answer your question, Marlon, what role did I play? I can only speak for me. And I think that I stopped communicating effectively how I wanted or what I wanted, or that I couldn't be me. And then I stayed longer than I should have stayed. So that's my fault. I stayed longer than I should have stayed. And that wasn't fair to my my ex. And I
right,
think when you stay longer than you're supposed to stay, then you can start to um,
Resent.
resent and not you resent them for the wrong reasons because
mm,
you're responsible for your happiness. Nobody else is.
Mhm.
Because you asked me a question earlier, James, and you asked me, can I be whole? I was whole before I came into the marriage. So I should have did the proper channels to made the proper moves to do that. And I'm not saying I should have left, but I tried to do counseling with him, and he didn't want that. So I tried to do those things, but even if I would have done those things, some things were not meant to be. You can force them, but they weren't meant to be.
right. Um, I think that was a beautiful way in answering that question. Marlon, I'll answer your question just out of respect that you answered it. But I did want to preface, and I think Ruth hit on it. We oftentimes confuse the wrongdoing of the mate versus the wrongdoing that comes with the response to what one person did, right? And so I hopefully that clarifies it. Just because one person, like in my situation, my ex cheated, right? But to answer your question, because I want to keep tonight on Ruth as our guest, but I'll answer this, Marlon. I think my wrongdoing was having even still an expectation afterwards. In my mind, I still thought it was going to be happy out. Hey, we're going to solve this. We're going to get down to the bottom of this. And so, unlike Ruth, I didn't step back and say, well, first, I got to take care of me before anything and anybody, right? And so sometimes there is a big difference between just because you identify who did something wrong or the deal breaker, whatever we want to use it, but our response to it can also, like what Ruth alluded to, can do us more damage than good and build resentment and things of that sort. So Marlon put us on the spot with that one. Man, we're going to have to get you on the podcast. We can ask you some hard questions. No, I'm just kidding. Let's move on. I'm going to get caught up with some of these questions, you guys. So bear with me. It says, Carmen McBride, thank you for joining us. She said that was a powerful statement. I believe she was alluding to living in peace, not with pieces. That's what attracted me about it. Marlon came back and he said to the panel, Marlon is
With
going to
self
put.
honesty, not self blame. We
Uh,
answered his question though.
we
She
answered
answered.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to make
absolutely.
sure it got read, Marlon. I didn't forget about you. And then we have O2 Boo. Ruth, you are the perfect Ruth and mother. Look at Ruth just getting shouted out there. I'm trying
Right.
to touch my family. Like, y'all better get in here and tell you something good about me. I'm loved too, I think. Terry Coleman says, I can relate as well. I've been with a woman for 20 plus years and 8 kids later. And it seems like we have been growing apart and wanting to stay together for the kids is not healthy, but it's hard to
He's probably saying to let go.
let go. Ruth, you're our guest. I want to make sure that we have we allow you to kind of give whatever your experience is. Not saying you have all the answers, but I do want to let you kind of get first dibs on, if you will, responding to these questions. Life after death. I mean, I said life after death. I'm thinking about Biggie Smalls. Life after divorce, living in peace, not in pieces.
It's literally a
And
death
so,
though.
Yes, it is. It
I
actually
know,
is.
right?
Yes.
To Diane,
Hmm.
it is.
Yes.
Look
To
at Diana
answer
bring me. See, that's why I missed you. Go ahead.
to Boo's question, thank you. To his statement, I thank you. Um, to Terry, like I said, no shape, form am I advocating divorce. And I think that back in the day, what I loved about marriages is that no matter what, you still stuck through, no matter what. But in my case, I have two amazing daughters. And in my marriage, that's what we created together. And so when I look back on my marriage, I don't look at it and say it was all bad because it was not. Um, my daughters, my alpha and my omega, my beginning and my end. So that was created within that 34-year reunion. And so to Terry, I don't think that it's fair to the kids to stay somewhere that, or to just live in turmoil because you're still not living in peace and the kids see that. So did my kids see me and their dad arguing and fussing and fighting? Not like that, no. But my youngest saw some things that I wish she hadn't seen. And that was the love that she used to see, she didn't no longer see that. And I think that when you look at a marriage when you're younger, you should want to see mommy and daddy loving on each other and not feeling like we just have to be here because he pays the bills or she does this or she does that. Kids need to see love and a mutual respect for one another. But when you stay for the sake of just staying, the kids see that and the kids feel that. And I don't think that is fair to the children. And so if I had to tell anybody to work on it first, you work on it. But if it can't, if it's not fixable, life is too short to stay someplace and be miserable and like to live in pieces.
Right.
But I'm not advocating to just pick up and leave. But what I am advocating is that your own mental state of being is priceless, and that you should give that to the kids as well.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Man, we can just close down close down right now and just ask for the altar call to come on down, ask for the people with the white gloves to come down. Because I think, Ruth, as we talked about on Sunday, even though there is some truth in the world, sometimes the world's judgment make it hard to navigate, right? And we talked about other places, right? You know, as Christians, sometimes in the church, we don't really get to talk about it as much, sometimes in a Black community. So we wind up just kind of getting a lot of this, what I call tribal knowledge built in there. Hey, do it for the kids. And that sounds good, right? And whatnot, but there's no practicality to it. Because to your point, what can you do? What role can you do successfully? And again, we want a preference. We believe in marriage, right? We don't believe in divorce, but I do think there are some avenues in which that is a solution, if for nothing else, safety, security, and peace of mind. And I think we have to put peace of mind up there with safety and security, right? Let's break this stigma that, well, if it ain't none physical or not, well, guess what? Have you ever lost your mind, so to speak? Have you ever lived in purgatory mentally to where, let's just keep it 100. Thank you, Dana. To where coming into the household, you would rather go sit at a bar.
War zone.
Yes, yes.
War
Just
zone.
like you said, when I went through my counseling with divorce, they did equate it to death. When my father passed away, that's the closest relative I lost. Going back into where my mother lived at, I couldn't do it. There was just certain spaces I couldn't do it. And so we have to look at that divorce. And to Terry's point, that 20 years is not just easy, family and friends. So before you rush in and give that advice that may be good from your purview, I love what Ruth said. Sometimes let's go get a professional help. And I think, Terry, to your point, I would humbly suggest as a certified life coach, man, those questions right there ultimately has to be your decision, right? But I say unequivocally, like Ruth said, kids should be a component into thinking about, hey, what type of help and assistance we need. But the last time I checked, a marriage takes two. It is not built to be sufficient with
One
one.
experience.
And I think Diana put something like that on her social media. Now you're going to be in survival mode, and especially, Terry, and I won't get on my soapbox, but as a man, now you're carrying around the weight of the world plus this extra thing that was never designed for you to carry. So you're putting yourself in position to make those mistakes, like Ruth said, that, okay, I may not be the culprit, if you will, but I'm simply making mistakes because I'm trying to sustain something by myself that was never meant for me to do. But again, I think that's why counseling is so important, because there are so many nuances to questions like that.
Right.
Let's move. Marlon says, in my past marriage, I realized that I was reactionary. Whoo, that word right there, because I didn't like my
I didn't feel
ex-wife.
like.
I didn't feel like my ex-wife heard me. In my past marriage, I realized that I was reactionary because I didn't feel like my ex-wife heard me. Ruth, you have any feedback, comments, or anything on that statement right there?
I
That's a
think
lot.
I can't speak for everybody, but I think in a marriage, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate, um, because even in this podcast, somebody will hear this and go back and translate something that's not meant or not how I'm saying it. So
Mm-hmm.
let me just, when I say this, um, it's not important to me to tell my story about my divorce as what happened, what didn't happen, what he did, what I did. And I'm
Right.
not ashamed of anything. But what I'm advocating is to let people know that there is life after divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that a lot of times you get ostracized, or that you think that you're a castaway, especially sometimes by the church. Some people say pray it away. Some things you can't pray it away, not when you're going through it,
Come on.
or when you feel like your whole life is being destroyed. And it's what Marlon just said. Um, I'm pretty sure that my ex may feel like I didn't hear him, and I felt like he didn't hear me. But when you're battling, and sometimes, and even in my current relationship, sometimes you're talking, and you don't talk with the intentions of hearing. You talk with the intentions of to rebuttal, or you
That'd
want
be
to
Right.
say,
right.
"I can't wait to get my turn. I can't wait to get my turn." If you keep saying that, then I don't hear what's being said. So in Marlon's case, maybe she didn't hear you. In my case as a wife, maybe I didn't hear him. But at the same time, maybe we wasn't hearing each other because we both want to be heard. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and it's not like when you with little small minute things like that, you can work through that. But it takes two to work through that. And sometimes people want to throw in the towel. But in my case, maybe I didn't hear my ex-husband. Maybe I didn't want to hear him. And I didn't want to hear him because I was tired. Because I knew that I was done mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I wasn't supposed to be there.
Right.
So
Again, Ruth, this may sound like a broken record, but I appreciate you so much, and I will echo this again: the bravery, the normalcy, and with the approach of you sharing your story. I think we don't give people credit in this day and age where people are quick to judge. Even if you're talking, they have already made up in their mind what they're going to say, what your response will. So just to be able to have you on this platform, and like you said, no, we're not talking about as so much of the divorce in itself because people have different nuances, right? We do want to focus on how do we live in peace and not in pieces. And this is just a part of the foundation to understand, okay, once we get here, here are some things what we're doing. So I'm hopeful we have an audience that's astute and mature enough to understand that. But again, I do thank you for sharing your story. I'm trying to get these questions out. I also made ready together. It's hard. Okay. So we got Marlon back. He said, also we read that one.
Yeah.
Marlon said, thank you for sharing again, Ruth. Marlon said, definitely understand. He'll answer. So, okay. He said, we can get him on here, Donna. You see, we're going to hold him to that, put the fire to our feet. I think that's what, is that CR? CJ
CJL.
at Root, you are enough. Oh, that's enough said right there.
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Terry said, I think if you can't communicate and address the issues, it seems to be taken for condoning the issues. As I said again, and you guys can echo on this, sometimes you can find yourself in a situation that you're not prepared for. Sometimes you can find yourself in a situation that sounds good, but when the smoke clears, it was a mistake, right? We have to be honest and open, mature with that. Because if you can't communicate with yourself or you can't be open and transparent with yourself, I don't care who comes along and be your knight in shining armor, so to speak, you're probably not going to be able to do it with another person, right? Because
Right.
excuse me, like Ruth and I were talking about on Sunday. Usually in the beginning, we fluff it up with the nice, beautiful things and whatnot. So there's no room for nuance, right? We're not really dealing with issues, problems, polarizing differences of opinions. We usually find those things, unfortunately, when we're already in it. We already said I do. It's years down the line. The smoke done clear. Honeymoon is over, right? And we just find that we're not compatible. So again, no, we're not promoting divorce. But like you said, if you can't communicate and address those issues within yourself, there's no amount of counseling going to force you to do something that you have to be able to do within yourself.
Right. But I also I uh I think when it comes to communicating and addressing issues, the same thing applies with what you allow, right? Because what you
Mm,
allow will continue. So being able to, I mean, I guess in what way are you unable to address or communicate, you know what I'm saying, the issue,
mm-hmm.
because like I understand that there's an issue that has arisen. Somebody has addressed it. Was it misconstrued? Was it miscommunicated? Like nobody's just walking around and saying like, "Oh, I'm just not going to say anything so that I can condone whatever this scenario is." Somebody spoke about it at some point, and it may have been a scenario of, "Well, I just didn't hear what you were saying," or
Right.
maybe they misunderstood what you were saying, and nobody wanted to clarify it because we already have issues. We don't want to add to it.
Right.
Right. And down to what you're talking about is that ongoing work, right? Like
Mhm.
it doesn't, and that's why I say we have to be careful with people outside looking in. The Bible talked about how how those false
Mhm.
comforters, came to Job. They meant well, but throughout it, they was wrong, right? And sometimes we have to realize the false confidence in our own lives. It's
Yeah.
it's not that cookie cutter sit down. I say this, you say that. Hey, we live happily ever after. Sometimes you have to do that work, and that's why we always say,
Mhm.
hey, the early on you do this work, it can become ongoing later on instead of new later on. Usually, when it's new later on, everybody draw the line in the sand, and it's kind of like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the biggest mistake. A lot of men, we've been taught happy life, wife, happy wife, so we don't say
Mm-hmm.
anything. In this woman's mind, they've been doing right, but then all of a sudden they get on our nerve. We'll bring it up then, and they're like, wait a minute, for 5 years I've been. Well, that's unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be honest. And so, if
Yeah.
you don't have these type of foundations, I was talking to my brother, and I definitely respect his privacy, but we had a conversation as men. A lot of time we react, and a lot of time why we react because we have been taught that it's okay to not show any emotion. Well, that's a catch
Mm-hmm.
22. Because the first thing that you all do that gives up that affects our emotions, it's going to come out. We're communicating to Dana's point, but we're not communicating correctly.
Correct.
So now we start having these sidebar issues, and guess what? The real issue could have been resolved in not only just communicating, but how we communicate. Right. Again, you guys, I want to thank you guys for your questions. We'll continue. We're going to have some questions for our distinguished guest tonight, Ruth Coleman. She's been humble enough to come and share and be our guest on tonight's show. Life after divorce, living in peace, not in pieces. What do we do? How do we put ourselves back together? What are some things that we think about? Where do we go get the help for that life after divorce to make sure that we're living in that proverbial peace and not living just in pieces? O2 Boo says, from being a child of a marriage that should have ended, the toxic in the marriage can lead the children to think that's how marriage is supposed to be, or make them feel not want to be in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Look,
Absolutely.
that's a whole one right there. If any one of you want to elaborate to them, but man, that's a powerful statement right there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Ruth already, alluded to this conversation when I think Terry was the one who said that he was in a 20-year marriage and they have 8 kids and he was
Mm-hmm.
staying essentially for the kids. I mean, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are sponges, and they see and feel literally everything. So even when you think they're not hearing you, they're absolutely hearing you and they're seeing you, and they're essentially going to embody or kind of take the same type of notion you are in your scenario because you're literally showing them what it's supposed to look like. So they're going to
Right.
capture that picture in their head and they're going to go out and find the same type of dynamic because I mean, this is what it's supposed to be like. This is what I saw growing up. So why isn't our dynamic similar to the one I saw when I grew up or the one I saw when I was growing up? So it's
Right.
very
And
important to
relating to the comment, O2 Boo, from being a child and of a marriage that should have ended, the toxic. Okay. So my daughter, my oldest daughter, she watches everything. So did my youngest daughter. But I'll never forget this. And it goes to relate to what the statement is here. Um, Love and basketball. I'm sure
mm-hmm,
you guys have seen that. My oldest daughter, when the mother was ironing the clothes
mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
and she ironed his shirt for him to go to work. And he came and said, "Babe, would you iron this shirt for me?" And she had already ironed his shirt and she was tired. They had just moved. And she was like, "Okay." But he didn't see that she was tired and she didn't feel
right,
like ironing that shirt.
right,
And we watched that movie, and my oldest daughter looked at me and she said, "That's you."
mm,
That bothered me so much. And it hurt me actually. And she was not trying to hurt me. And I said, "What do you mean?"
mm-hmm,
She said, "That's how daddy does to you."
Mm.
And I didn't see it that way. I saw it as that I was a wife and that if he asked me to do something, I would do it. But my daughter saw me being a servant
mm,
to that sometimes it's not even noticed or someone don't even notice that you're not feeling good or that you already did that. So why can't he just wear the shirt that you earned for him? That was just an example.
right,
So relating to what he said that I have daughters watching me and I don't want them to think that it's okay to be miserable or not to be your authentic self or to settle. And I'm not saying that they saw something that they shouldn't have seen, but I want them to be happy and I want them to see me happy. And now
Mhm.
when they see me, they see a different version of me. And I can't say what they see in their dad because I'm not around their dad. But when they see
Right.
me, they see me. My youngest daughter say, "You like doing that?" I've been loving doing that, but now she's seeing me. They actually see me, not mommy. They see Ruth. I'm gonna
Mhm.
always be mama to them, but they see Ruth, and that's what I love. So I don't think that you should stay in a marriage or mimic something because your kids will mimic that.
Mhm.
Right.
Your kids will think that that's normal. And what Boo just said, that it can make you not want to be married, or when you see toxic, you think that that's normal. So if you walk around and parents not knowing how to love each other or hug each other or kiss each other because you never seen that, when they do get
Mhm.
married, it's like when a wife asks you, "Can you give me a kiss, baby? Why do you want to kiss?" I never saw my parents kiss. That
Mhm.
don't make it
Hmm.
normal, but you tend to think that that's normal. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's normalize showing your kids, and actually not faking it, but being happy and knowing
Yes.
how to show love. And that's what I want my kids to see.
Yeah. When I read that statement, I'll move on. It made me think about hurt people, but we never wonder how does that start. Like we able to identify, but it's to that point. It's like if I've been hurt subconsciously or consciously, now I have a greater chance of projecting that hurt out. We have to teach our children, amongst other things, how to be vulnerable in our truth, right? We're not Superman and Superwoman walking around here with no emotions, because to Ruth's point, that can create a whole different issue within itself. And so, again, that's why we advocate having professionals come in. Let's normalize that, right? We may not have all the answers, especially when you're in it, right? Those are probably the time where you even probably have the answer, but you're not thinking, because there are real raw emotions, right? But like Ruth and Dinah said, kids are still looking. They're still sponges. Hell, they can do that with two parents in the house, right? With nothing going
Mhm.
on, and pick up something that's that's atypical. And so yeah, great feedback here. Marlon says, along with counseling, God will also give you the direction to go. And many times we fail to read the warning along the way. Something, Ruth, you and I talked about on Sunday, right? Like it can't just be one component. God don't come down like a magic pill and say, okay, I'm going to help you. Now, God puts people such as counselors, doctors, medication, whatever, around us, and let us make the best decision for ourselves. But we have to be transparent in what type of help that we need.
And not everybody knows Christ. Not
Right.
everybody
Right.
is there. So in the midst of, you hear it all the time, people say, God is good, and he is. But not everybody knows him. Not
Mhm.
everybody is there.
Right.
So for me, when I first, keep in mind, it was not normal for me to be going through a divorce. It was not normal for me to be apart from a man that practically raised me. This man
Mhm.
raised me. And I say that with respect because he taught me a lot. And when I say he taught me a lot, part of the woman that I am today is because of him. And I give him
Mhm.
accolades for that. So I'm not no way, shape, form bashing him, because a lot of
Mhm.
the things that I aspired to be came from him. He gave me that vision. So
Yeah.
he raised me pretty much. I met him when I was 15. But like I said, what looks good to you when you're younger, when you get older, you start to have your own sense of that. But when Marlon said, pray, some people don't know how to do that. Some people are
Mhm.
not there. So when you're going through the mist and you feel like you're about to lose everything, what do I do after that? What do I do then? So that's what some people want to know. I'm going through it now, and I don't have a um, prayer partner. I don't know who God is. So what do you tell those people then who's going through the mist, about to lose everything? And what I tell them is that, well, for me, be still.
And know that I am
Be
God.
still. And
Yes,
I had to
ma'am.
learn to be still.
Mm,
And
come on,
Mhm.
many days in
come on.
my house is not a small house. It ain't a gigantic house. But in that house, when I was going through, I went through by myself sometimes. I had a
Mhm.
village, but the God that I serve, because I do know him, he allowed my friends and my closest friends not to answer the phone. He
Amen.
allowed
Yeah,
them not to be there when I called, because he wanted me to be still and to go through that by myself. And when I went through it by myself, I learned that I am a conqueror. So I didn't need that 34-year person that was with me all alone. I didn't need them anymore because I can do it on my own. And what I mean, I can do it on my own. Sometimes you're going to need a little help. But when I say
Mm-hmm.
need a little help, but you also can make it on your own. You can do that by yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
can, and you will. You'll get through it. Some days going to be long. You might have to cut out some things, but you can make it. You can restore. You can rebuild, but you can
Mm-hmm.
do it. I'm a
Yes.
And,
living witness.
Yes.
and understand, you guys, I always talk about this. It's the puzzle theory. It does not, and it won't be cookie cutter. The way you put that your puzzle together won't be the way that Ruth put hers together, Donna put hers, so on and so forth. And so that's why I think it's so important that you revisit your circle. It, like Ruth said, it doesn't make them bad people, but every season you got to have the type of adornment that you need in that season, right? If you here in Texas, you know you do not need a coat right now, right? That's going to probably add more on to your discomfort than good. So whatever season you in, emotional, what you're going through, we have to make sure that we equipped, right? When it's all said and done. And so I'm glad you kind of took the time, Ruth, and kind of expounded on that, because I think a lot of time, even in our Christian faith, we do more harm than good by acting like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus just this kind of pill we put on it. You know,
Right. Right.
time where, not to get off on a tangent, Jesus, when he saw some people who needed food, he didn't just give them a scripture. No, he
Mm-mm.
That's
met
it.
them with their need.
That's
There
it.
was
Yep.
times when someone died, he didn't just say, well, God will pray. No, he met them on their need. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
to those out there who want to support. I think this is the community we're talking to. Sometimes it's just better to admit that you have nothing to say or it's nothing you can do, and defer. Hey, is there any counsel that we can look up in your community? Hey, do you have EAP on your job? Like, sometimes the best thing to do, as Ruth alluded to, is just be still.
I was
Because
just finna say that.
person need, not only does that person need to hear from God, but if you're going to call yourself to be a part of the healing process, you probably need to hear from, well, you need to hear from God too, not just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your emotions. So I'm glad we was able to kind of tackle that without it. Some
Yes.
people feel some type of way about that, but we're gonna be real here. Carmen McBride says, how can men and women move on without mourning their marriage after divorce? Now, we have cousin with that, but of course we hear it now. And so, Ruth, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of address it in whatever way that you feel. So I know you can only speak from a woman's standpoint, but how can you move on without mourning the marriage after divorce, or can you? I'll add on to Carmen's question. Can you move on without the mourning process, in your opinion?
Well, for me, I think that marriage is when you get a divorce, it's almost like a death. You mourn
Mm-hmm.
it, but I
Mm-hmm.
mourned mine while I was in it, and
Amen.
that's not shade. I mourned mine while I was in it, and what I mean by that is I knew that it was ending. So there was a time where I mourned it while I was in it. But I think in order to move on, you have to mourn it,
Yes.
Mhm.
and you have to mourn it, and then let it go. Um, and but I did mourn my marriage, and I mourned it in ways that is no longer, and I put it to rest. So that's why I mourned it. So now that's why I'm not bitter, or I don't think
Mm-hmm.
about it, and I wish him well. And I mean that with a sincere heart. But if I hadn't mourned it, I would still be bitter, and I'm not bitter.
Yes.
Right.
But you have to mourn it. To me, in my case, I can't speak for anybody else, but if you ever truly loved, you have to mourn something when you let it go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And that's something I talk about in my book, grieving, a time period of grieving or mourning, if you will. I don't care what you go through, anything that's close, even a job that you had for X amount of years and transition careers. I think we under value, Ruth and Diana, that time period of mourning, right? 'Cause that's one of those emotions, we got to be hard and tough, that it takes a lot of vulnerability in that. But to me, like you said, I think that's a very necessary component and time frame as we're picking up the pieces and moving forward, because there are some realities in that, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
where that metamorphosis starts, right? If I've been with someone X amount of years, I'm morphing back into this single-minded, single space thought process, right? And so that doesn't happen, lay down one night, wake up the next day. And so sometimes it's in that morning where you do have reflection, right?
Yes.
Think about an actual debt, because my counselor told me the same thing. There is reflection, good. it's a separation, right? Hey, this is the good time. Hey, that's not so much good. And as you sort through the good and that bad, that way you're not trying to change what's good. Well, that's the good part of me. But then there's some transparency to say, okay, you know what, I probably need to go get help on that. So I think that mourning process is very important. Um, I think Queen Coleman hit it on the head. Fundamentally, as a believer, marriage actually takes three: you, your mate, and God. And you know, as a believer, when you leave Him out, hey, something's getting ready to go wrong because it's His institution. Quite frankly, Terry Coleman said, just knowing that you can't talk or it's not going to get through or misunderstood. What is my punishment? What is my pushing point? What is my pushing point is that I can stick up for the kids without it being a different argument and situation. Um, so yeah,
So
go ahead.
I think what the issue might be is for what he's saying is the kids. Like they, it looks like, from what he's saying right here is there's no middle ground or balance when it comes to how they operate with the kids. If
Right,
I'm reading that correctly, like he says he wants to stick up for the kids without the argument going into a different scenario. Or
right. So, and I talk about this, Terry, and we can talk offline, but I talk about this again in my book, Think Better to Be Better. If if our emotion won't allow us to identify a root, that underlying issue, right? Those emotions will put so many other layers on there, and before we know it, and I think that's what the panelist said tonight. Even with kids, yes, kids can be a point of motivation, but all these other issues that we're pouring on top of the underlying thing, and let's just take, for example, and not putting words in your mouth, Terry, let's just say the underlying issue is communication. Well, now we're trying to
mm,
communicate about the kids. Now we're trying to communicate with the kids. And now, like, we're putting so many layers, and that's what becomes unfair to self, like Root said earlier. Because now I'm operating out of dysfunction. I'm operating out of low emotional intelligence. And guess what? Even if I may have valid point, Terry, you're not good for nobody. Those who try to become everything for everyone becomes nothing to no one. And a lot of time we justify with that emotion, and that's the problem. And I'm gonna say this with all due respect, that's the problem with making kids the number one thing, because we're gonna always feel some type of way about our children. Like that's a touchy
mm,
subject for anyone, right? And as Ruth alluded to earlier, if that you only responsible for yourself, but if that other person choose or don't have the emotional intelligence to get that, well, if you don't hear what you want to hear or get the response you want to, guess what? Now we're more reactive than proactive. And so that's why I say in the beginning, we have to understand what is our intention in having conversation, realize our limitations, and then more important, Terry, hey, sometimes there's nothing wrong with getting outside help for if nothing else, like Ruth said, hey, let me get mine together, right? Because
mm,
I'm still gonna have to be a parent regardless,
yes,
right? And sometimes, like Ruth said, which I think is powerful, sometimes we got to be honest, make sure we're not trying to run from the fact that this is over and
mm-hmm,
using the excuse of the kids, right?
That's right.
Hey, the
yeah,
reality is this is over, and that's hard within itself. And yes, we need counsel for it. As men, we don't apologize for that, but we want to make sure we're not using our children as pawns and or excuses indirectly, because, like I think Boo said earlier, they feel that, man.
mm-hmm,
They feel that, and it has nothing to do with being a good parent or bad parent. No, but that's still a human being with their own
yes,
thoughts, right?
yeah.
So we want to be fair in that capacity. So I sometimes see
Oh, okay. So he does like what you said. He just goes mute and he just lets
that's exactly,
whatever be what it is.
exactly. And see,
But
that's
that's
one of
not
those
fair to
things.
the kids because
There you go.
also it's as Terry as I can't speak for a man, but I'm gonna just say if my dad was around and I saw that something wasn't right and you wasn't advocating for me, as if you was my dad, I would lose a little respect. So sometimes I
Mm-hmm,
would want you to step up and say something and put your foot down. Or let's just say if mama was saying something that wasn't right to a daughter or
mm-hmm,
allowing her to dress a certain way. If you're the dad and you know that I think that's inappropriate. As a dad, you should let your daughter know, baby, I think that's inappropriate. So if you're going to be the
mm-hmm,
man in the house or the father, Be the father and lead and say something, because when that is stripped from you, the kids see that and they feel like my
Mm-hmm.
dad was weak and he didn't say anything. He didn't save me. And I think all kids need a little structure. But if in
Yeah.
my house, we gonna do it the right way. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying overpower your wife, but what I am saying, show the kids that I got you in all shape,
Mm-hmm.
form, domestic form, whatever. Even if it's against mama, you can pull mama aside and say, I don't like that. But I think your voice needs to be heard, because you'll start to resent her, you'll start to resent being there, and that's not fair. But I
You
think you need to make your voice heard, and you don't have to yell to make your voice heard,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to make your voice heard. And for the kids too, because if you're there for the kids, then be there for the kids. Don't
you
go
can
mute because you're going mute on your kids.
Mm-hmm.
you cannot identify a correct solution to a fake problem.
That's it.
And if you're not careful, all these other emotions that are changes and branches from the main theme, you're now chasing these issues. And here's the thing that we have to say here tonight, panel. It's not even the kids' fault. They honestly don't have any say so whether y'all stay together, whether you break up, get a divorce.
Right.
Let's just be transparent. So when we say that doing it for the kid, let's just step into it. The kids are usually the last person, if anything, that has a say so in it, right? It all starts with, are we able to manage our emotions correctly? Because like something that that Ruth and I talked about on Sunday, that's why we're talking about how do we identify living in peace, not in peace, because this is a new land. This is a new space. It's almost like if someone dropped you off in a foreign land, you don't speak their language or whatnot. Because again, marriages don't get together with the idea that one day I'm gonna be back single.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself that time and that grace instead of rushing and being reactive to every emotion, justifying it on the kids and things of that sort. Give your time that space. And that's why I say those false confidence. Sometimes, like Ruth said, we got to sit and just in peace and just hear. Whether it's here from God, a higher power, whether even if you go to counsel, are you hearing it? Are you really? What if the counselor exposes something in self? Right? If I'm filled with all these other emotions and I don't know how to process the emotions, your kid can't be the deal breaker into whether or not I listen to my counselor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things. And Terry, I appreciate you as a man saying this, because we don't get to talk about this, right? Because we're taught no emotion, no feelings, but it shows it's a human thing, right? Not every man is the culprit, like Ruth said, in the demise of a relationship or in a divorce. But we have to even more intentionally be intentional with our emotions to make sure that we're not justifying it being a man, which is toxic masculinity in definition, justifying it. And now that, let's just say, Lord forbid, the divorce is over, and like Ruth Diana talked about, now years later we identify these other issues. Like, well, you can't blame it on the other person, right? You didn't know you was hurry up unrooting another seed, but you was planting another one, right? Um, Terry says to give you that space and time for it to be you and God. Exactly. That's exactly what you actually need. He said, "This is how God worked because I'm
Mm-hmm.
experiencing
Amen.
the same thing." That's the start of your piece. At confirmation, man. Love that we can get that. Um, Carmen McBride says, well said. Thank you, guys. Carmen, thank you for joining in the conversation. Again, I want to just make sure I get everybody's comments. Marlon says, absolutely. Terry, of course, he says that's right. And then we had Boo that came back, said, your children are watching when they grow up. They hold on to what they feel you did wrong and right. Perception
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
become reality. Do
Absolutely.
not just think you understand. My ex cheated on me. That doesn't mean that my son's gonna understand and interpret that the right way. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it was something so powerful. What if they now identify their feelings to protect themselves? Or go walls come up. Oh, every woman's gonna be like the woman who
Mm-hmm.
married. But you didn't take time as a parent to explain the nuance. No, that was just that person. Because I'm in my feelings now, right? So now I'm implanted that seed, and could you imagine the struggle that my son would have to deal with? So you're absolutely right. Children hold on to the feels. A lot of times we try to protect what they see, but you can't stop them from feeling what they actually feel, right?
And then, sorry, before you go on, and then
Go ahead.
sometimes supposedly protecting them from certain things, can also derail them too. Like, for example, not arguing in front of your kids. Sometimes it's okay for them to see healthy arguments. They're not always arguments. It could be like a debate, but then they grow up and get into this marriage relationship, and then their partner isn't arguing. They're like, oh my God, why aren't we arguing? My
Mhm.
parents, you know what I'm saying? I never saw them argue. So this got to be bad. It's got to be terrible. You get what I'm saying? Some things it's okay, you know what I'm saying, for them to see so they understand, like, okay, sometimes we have healthy debates, and this is what they may look like, so that when they do grow up and get into their own dynamic, they're not going crazy and trying to leave because they had one minuscule argument about, I don't know, the trash being taken out. So
I,
just
I,
saying.
I love it. I love it. And again, as we're talking about life after divorce, living in peace, not in peace, is one of the things we always try to identify. As you can see, these are human issues. I think that's another thing we do. We approach it with this because in a heterosexual relationship, we are typically, if I'm a male, it typically was a woman who hurt me. If it was a woman, it's typically a male, right? Typically, right? And so it's so easy to start looking through the lens of just gender bias. And that's another mistake, Terry, that I know we as men make. I'm not a woman, so I can't speak on it, but we tend to take the feedback and counseling through our gender bias simply because in my case, that's a woman who
Mm-hmm.
hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's the worst thing let's be honest, we don't really teach our children, right? And now when they go into their second communities of relationships, they already have that bias automatically built in, right? And a lot of time we teach that bias. Well, all women are this, well, all men are this, right? And so we have to be very careful when we say, if we're doing it for the kids, are we really doing it? Are we really handling the nuances that's really for the child versus hiding behind that, just to pack down our emotions? Look, you guys have given us some great conversations, some great questions here. I want to kind of bring this to a close again. And Ruth, as I said again, thank you for being our guest. I have two more questions as in closing that I want to kind of allow you in your own way to kind of answer. Because we've talked about, like I said, how we get here. And we know everyone has a different story. Not all the time does it have to be where we're at each other's throat. It doesn't always have to be the cliche, someone cheated or someone was abusive. It could just be, hey, you know what? We just looked up and this is not working. Hey, one person's growing, one person's not. There are a number of things that get us here. But once we're here on the other side of the fence, how can we live in peace and not in pieces of ourselves? So with that in mind, Ruth, what helped you rediscover your purpose? Okay, we're here. I'm single again. I have my beautiful daughters. I see what I've gotten out of that. So it wasn't all a loss to me. But what helped you rediscover now your newfound purpose, if you will?
Actually, I'm still discovering that.
Mm,
I'm still discovering that.
mm.
And I'm not in a rush. When I say I'm not in a rush, I'm still discovering who Ruth is, and I'm loving what I'm finding out.
Yes.
So
Mm,
I'm still rediscovering who I am. Um,
mm.
and I'm still sitting still to a certain extent, but I'm still learning new things. I'm still learning things that I like and things that I don't like. And I'm still on that journey. I'm still learning.
I love it. I love it. Sometimes the solution is yes, no, and not right now. I teach my son all the time, and I think we as adults we try to get a yes or no, and sometimes it's just not right now. It's to be continued,
Right.
right? I'm in a space of I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm not over it. It's a process, and so
Right.
I love it. And my last question for you tonight, and again, thank you all for jumping on and asking your questions. Marlon, I'm gonna get you, man. I'm gonna inbox you for giving us the tough question. I wasn't ready yet, but we got through it. But Ruth, my last question for you is: can divorce be a spiritual awakening?
Yes. Yes. And mine's was.
Okay.
And I told you in the beginning, I used to think that I couldn't do anything without my ex. And when Carmen just asked about mourning, um, now I'm not knocking no one who don't believe, but I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who knows that God is a jealous God,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes He will remove. someone from you, whether it's through death or whether it's just removing, period. And I think that God allowed my marriage to part ways so that I can see Him. I became
Mhm.
closer to God. And I also became in that journey that I think it's like my favorite scripture, Philippians 4 and 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so when you ask about a spiritual awakening, it was for me because when I look back, it was only me and God. And it was only Him who brought me through and who's bringing me through. So I can't say that this person was there, that person was there. It was me and Him. So He taught me that I put you, not even that He put us together, but I allowed y'all to be that. But I'm also going to carry you in the departure
Mhm.
of your divorce. And I'm going to say the death of my divorce.
Mhm.
So He
Mm,
still carried me. So that was a spiritual awakening for me that I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. And if He remove anything else from me, I'm still going to stand and I'm still going to be all right.
Mhm.
man, sometimes God have to protect us from ourselves, right? That's why I think that cookie cutter mentality, we get our knowledge base off of social media and all these things. I love that closing up transparency, Ruth, is sometimes no matter what the other person did, um, I have to look and be convicted within myself and understand what does God is calling me to do. And I think that gives a way for you to for understanding it and for healing. And so I want to leave it right there. I cannot thank you enough for the bravery, for the normality, and for the
Yes.
transparency of coming on, sharing
Mhm.
what you will, right? Like even sharing with me, and I'll thank you in front of our podcast team, and our viewers, man. When you first came to with the ideal just within the topic, and you were willing to share, I felt that it was going to be a great one. And so I thank you so much for your space. I thank the people who are following, being respectful, being open minded, and being respectful of the space that you have brought in here. And I thank God for the questions. Terry, I can't thank you enough as men, because a lot of time men, we don't join in on these conversations. Let's just be honest, right? And
Mhm.
so I appreciate those questions there. Terry said it's a molding and transformative cycle for God's purpose. You're absolutely right. It's a process to it, right? Just like it was a process getting with that person, it was dating, courting, fiance, marriage. Well, then to undo that, yeah, it is a process of undoing. But I think, as Ruth said, when you start understanding who your purpose is, what you are in this season, right? Hey, I'm not the same person I was when I was 12. I'm not the same person who I was yesterday, and setting peace with that and who God is calling you to be, or who has called you to be in this day and age, then I think that's where the true peace will start, and you won't find yourself in pieces. Queen Coleman said, "Great job, Ruth."
Mhm.
Said, "I'm so thankful for the invite." And so, with that being said, I humbly but I greatly would appreciate everyone who's following. Please go follow us on YouTube. Follow our Facebook page, Unfiltered King and the Queen podcast. We're also on TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, whatever you listen to podcasts. If you're new to it, but definitely like, follow, share us on YouTube. We will have this episode up, so if you want to share it, if you want to rewatch it, and continue the conversation wherever you have. If you have more questions and comments, we'll try to be interactive with you guys. We just want to be respectful of the time, and so won't let our time get away. But we do want to hear from you. That's the thing. And so please go out there, join our community. We have some great things coming up from Unfiltered Kings and the Queen podcast. We cannot do it without you. And so everybody who commented tonight, please go like us and follow us on YouTube, and also on our Unfiltered Kings and the Queen podcast space. Again, Ruth, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
presence. You
Thank
guys are
you.
going to be seeing more of Ruth. And so we got some things coming up that I think, as we continue to go through our season of growing and branching and trying to go where God wants us to do, we have some good things coming. Marlon says, thank you for sharing your story. May God continue to bless you as always. As always, it's great to see the Queen back. Dana, I'm glad that you was able to be back. And I think there's a lesson there also,
Absolutely.
be alone. Sometimes we got to step away, man. Your mental space. A lot of time we trying to handle all these life issues, and we're clogged up mentally. And so I'm glad that God allowed you to find your way back, and we'll continue to be praying for you. With that being said, this is season 4, episode Life After Divorce, Living in Peace, Not in Pieces. We've had the lovely Ruth Coleman join us as our special guest. We'll be talking about her experience, but more importantly, how her faith, how her transparency, and also how counseling helped her to
Yeah.
live in peace, not in pieces. You guys join us again on YouTube, Facebook. You can actually follow us there. But until next time, we have another great one coming up next week, Tuesday at 7 o'clock. So be on the lookout for us marketing that one, and having things in our social media space. But thank you again for everyone who chimed in. Until next time, this is Unfiltered Kings and the Queen podcast. This is where men and women talk to each other, not at each other. You guys have a great one.
Bye.